Hey everyone, how are we doing today? It's the last talk, I think, no? We're feeling good, we're feeling home, we're feeling fun, yes? No? It's so weird, like when you do this on video, you can't hear a room. It's just my lonely apartment. But anyway, we're gonna have a fun time together today. Let me quickly introduce myself. So my name is Tejas. That's unfortunately pronounced similar to contagious. I should maybe change that to be a bit more pandemic sensitive, and maybe say advantageous or something, courageous. Anyway, whatever. I'm here to talk to you today about a topic that's very close to my heart. But before we do that, I really feel the need to give some type of shout out to the organizers here, because I mean, can you imagine organizing something in the middle of a pandemic that's supposed to be a ski retreat conference that then ends up having to pivot to some online thing and manage expectations and oh my gosh. So to Thomas and Tanya, thank you. If you want to give us some emoji claps to support them, I'd appreciate that, because it's no small feat. And so really appreciate the opportunity to be here today and kind of share some stuff with you. I'm going to be talking today about, as I mentioned, a topic very close to my heart. Before we do that, I need to tell you where I work. I work at a company called Zeta. If you haven't heard of us, totally cool. We've been around for less than a year, maybe like 6 or 7 months or something like this. And, we try to kind of play in the field that the other speakers have played in, right? We try to make developer experience easy. And this is specifically in the context of databases. You want to make databases something you just don't have to worry about. You just kind of pick it up, put your data in, map some relationships, you're done. That's the goal. We're very far from that because we're still closed release beta-ish. We're not even ready yet. And so the goal is not really to sell you something today, but to just kind of chat about some topics in the industry. With that, let's talk about the topic. The topic today I'm here to talk to you about is my ideal tech stack. I'm not making a big, bold claim. I'm not saying the ideal tech stack. I'm not saying, the only one and nothing else, and this is the way. It's something that has worked really well for me personally, and just kind of browsing through tech Twitter, when you navigate, kind of around the dumpster fires that are on there, you tend to see different stacks of technology that people tend to thrive in and enjoy. And so, a lot of people have their preferences, and that's kind of what I'm here to talk to you about. My preferences that allow me and my teams that I work with and lead to just develop things at rapid pace. If there's anyone here who spends time in Stack Overflow comments shaming people for asking silly questions, and you have something like this to say, anyway, whatever, let's just move on. So the point I'm trying to make is we build apps on layers. That's what I mean by stack in the title of this talk, my ideal tech stack. A stack is exactly what it sounds like, right? It's like layers on top of which we build our things. I've been writing code since I was 8 years old. And I've seen some things, as many of you have. You kind of remember the dial-up modem sounds. You remember the dancing babies on GeoCities, all these things, right? In today's modern web landscape, I find there to be a lot of choices that people make. And I spend a lot of my time, so I work as the director of developer relations, and I spend a lot of my time talking to developers, both experienced developers and newer developers. And the general consensus seems to be there's a lot of choices. And this is often framed as a problem because what do we choose? But I think that's generally a good sign. That said, if there's someone who wants to attend maybe meetups or boot camps, it's a bit hard to know what to choose. Do I learn Ember, or do I learn React, or do I learn Vue or Svelte, or there's information overload. Growing up, this was a lot simpler. Like there was just something called the LAMP stack that I used quite a bit, and I think is still around today. It's Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP. I've built a lot of things on this. There's, I think WordPress was built on this. There's also e-commerce websites, CMSs, and so on. Over time, we end up getting the MERN stack that a lot of boot camps teach today, and I know a lot of people who dive into this topic. And I think the most prevalent way to build on the web today is, of course, the JAM stack. That stands for JavaScript, APIs, and markup. And these provide a nice starting ground to most beginners, for sure. But I want to talk today about some ways they fall short. And that's not to say they're bad and don't use them, but generally, like even the quality of the talk that I'm giving, there's room for improvement, I feel. So what I'd like to propose today, what I'd like to maybe share today, is a stack that I've been using that helps this significantly. But before we do that, I want to say a bit about the JAM stack, because for those of you who aren't familiar, the JAM stack is, I'd say, quite a prominent way to build on the web today. Using JavaScript for your interactivity, you connect to some type of API like GraphCDN or similar to retrieve your data. And lastly, you render or you give markup to your customers with HTML or something. This was made really popular by companies like Netlify, Smashing Magazine, and it's very prominent. In fact, the company I work at, Zata, we really try to cater to Jamstack developers because it's prevalent. The thing is, the expanded form of the Jamstack can be, I find, a bit too open-ended. And that's what I want to talk about today. This is not a criticism. This is not saying Jamstack is bad, but it doesn't serve new developers the best. What I mean by that is when there's open-endedness, there's room for decisions to be made, usually. When there's room for decisions to be made, there's often committee consensus required to make these decisions. So what I mean by that is, say you install React, right? You just npx create React app. The next decision you need to make is, okay, but now we have routes in our app. How do we handle routing? What do we use? Do we use React Router? Do we use Reach Router? So on and so forth. You could go even one level further, and instead of using React, what framework do we use? Where there's decisions, there's often time spent making them, considering them, having meetings. If you're in a small company, this might take like a few hours in a meeting, and it scales proportionally to the size of the company. I've worked in some large companies, and the larger the company, usually you need longer to make these decisions, anywhere from 3 hours to 3 days to 3 weeks. It depends on the size. I think we can do better. So I'd like to talk a little bit about what works for me in this way. The goal here is to remove some of the ambiguity, some of the open-ended questions, because where decisions are made for you, you can just move faster building your thing. Does that make sense? You can move faster focusing on, if I'm building a dating app, I can focus on my dating app. I don't have to think about frameworks and libraries and choices. I don't have to think about routing. I don't have to think about databases. Just as Max said, it just works. I can just do it. So with that, what is this? What is the stack? I'm calling it the next stack. I'm not expecting it to be a thing. I'm not expecting it to be something everybody uses or whatever. It's just, I call it this for myself because it helps me. What is the next stack made up of? I want to be very careful here to mention that all of what I'm sharing today is just lived experience. It's not, there's no agenda. There's no trying to sell you this or that. You may choose to use other technologies. It's totally cool. These things tend to work for my use cases. With that, the next stack, obviously, I think you'll guess what the N stands for. It's Next.js. I know there's Remix in the room. I know there's other frameworks and they're fantastic. Nothing against them. From experience historically, I've moved the fastest building things on Next.js. That may change, and who knows, but for now, I find that with its opinionated routing, with its idiomatic, it just gives you a backend API in a folder. So it makes a ton of decisions for you so that you can focus on building your app. You don't have to sit down and think about what do I use for routing? How do I server-side render? How do I generate a static site? It just works. Number two is the edge. Max spoke at length about this, so I won't mention more here, but it's generally this notion of deploying to the edge, to the edge that is closest to your users to reduce latency and reach them where they are. And this is a big point in comparison to the others, to the MERN stack, to the LAMP stack, to the JAM stack, because none of them factor in scale. None of them factor in how you deploy. Consider the MERN stack: MongoDB, Express, React, Node.js. Great. How do I deploy it? Who hosts it? What is the strategy to reach users with minimal latency? How does it scale? Those questions aren't answered. I think by deploying to the edge, we kind of solve that, right? We create these redundant HTML files that we push to the edge of a content delivery network that just reaches users with minimal latency. So edge, number two, it removes the question of how do we deploy. Number three is, well, I'm a little bit biased. Okay, I'm not here to sell you this. That's very important. I use Zeta, we don't know how to say it yet. And it has an X, so it fits. And I do believe it's the best way to store, retrieve, and work with data in a persistent way. And we'll talk more about that eventually. But similar to Next.js and deploying to the edge, it removes a number of variables and questions and just gives you an API. You just use it. What happens when it scales? How does it scale? How do we shard? These things are automatically handled. And I believe here this is quite a big point, because in the other stacks, even so the MERN stack has MongoDB. It doesn't really tell you how to scale. And this is where I've seen the biggest bottleneck in most teams. So I've worked at some teams with massive scale, etc. And scaling databases is a hard problem, is a very, very hard problem, because there's so many decisions you need to make. For example, do we use structured or unstructured data? Do we have some caching layer? Do we have read replicas? How do we have regional failover? Do we shard? What should our sharding key be? Sharding keys are also quite hard to change. So if you're like Facebook, then you get 30 million new user accounts per day, and you just have way too many names. Do you shard on the name? So way too many variables, way too many decisions to be made. Zata shows up and says, look, here's a database, here's an API, don't worry about it, we got you. Similar to Next.js, similar to the edge, and similar to the T in the stack, which is tailored CSS. I see a lot of hate for tailored CSS on Twitter on a daily basis. I don't understand it personally, because I use it and it allows me to fly with actually a tailwind on me. It kind of works with velocity. But this is another point of difference with the other stacks. They just don't factor in style. Knock down my hot sauce. I'm too fascinated. They don't factor in styling. Like, styling is something that takes up most of the time with front-end developers. Like, it's fighting the cascade is real. CSS is hard. Even the decisions you have to make there. What do we use? Vanilla extract, emotion, glamour, whatever, right? So these decisions take time. You throw Tailwind in the mix. It's an opinion that's been made, and it makes decisions for you on how you work with your CSS. I believe that this stack is the best way to build modern web applications. But what's that worth? It's just me, it's just my opinion. What's that worth? Well, let's talk about it. I want to tell you, here's why I believe that this is the best way to build modern web applications. And I want to tell you that with really focusing on 4 points. And these 4 points are as follows. Number one, ambiguity. It removes these technologies, this stack just removes ambiguity from the equation. Because whether it's Next.js with its opinionated routing, server rendering, API routes, etc., you don't have to think about those things. If it's Tailwind with your colors or your spacings, do we use pixels or EMs, or it handles that. Zeta with how do we shard, it handles that, right? Deploying to an edge is a target for your deployment. There is less ambiguity. Because of that, there is, yes, sponsored. This is the bomb. I can recommend. I don't get any royalties or anything. It's a good song. Anyway, so what I was saying was, that was a comment, by the way. Anyway, so what I was saying was, it removes the ambiguity and allows you to just focus on your thing. If I'm building a sports app or a live conference app, whatever, I don't want to sit and think about these things. So these decisions are made. The other stacks, the MERN, whatever, kind of present a little bit of ambiguity and choice. I think removing this is crucial to moving fast. Number two, performance. So there's dedicated teams who, like, it's their job to optimize performance on all of these things on a daily basis. Like, there's people sitting right now, probably optimizing the performance of Next.js and Remix. There's people optimizing the performance of Cloudflare. There's people. So these are things that I'd rather not do. And oftentimes I've been in early startup teams where this just doesn't get done. Like, if we're honest, it becomes technical debt for next quarter, and then next quarter. Oh, and then we're raising Series D. Okay, next quarter. And then you end up with something unperformant. If you feel that, raise your hand with the emoji, because I've definitely seen this happen. When there's teams who manage these things, I don't have to. I can focus on building my app. Number three is scalability. These other stacks, and we often tend to think of building things, and I'm really thankful that we have standards, we have open source tooling, we have a lot of things that help us build technology really well. We don't have a lot of things that help us scale really well. And by scale, I mean to massive scale. I mean to like 300+ million concurrent users. And this is why hearing about the work that Max and Kent are doing makes me happy because with the caching and the other steps they highlight, it helps companies scale well, because this is bound to happen, and you want that to be dealt with instead of having to deal with it yourself in response to some incident, right? These 3 points ultimately facilitate the last one, which is developer velocity. If there's less ambiguity, then there's just more likelihood that I can move fast on my specific task. If performance is handled, I don't have to optimize, either preemptively or in response to slowness. If scale is something that's given to me out of the box, I don't have to. So developer velocity is the goal here. And I believe the next stack provides this quite well. You might be thinking, okay, but still, like, why should I? Why is this a big deal? Let's practically look at it. And I'm sure there's people here in the room who have used these things, maybe not together. I just do a very small demonstration of these things to show you how the opinions that they make allows for really fun velocity. So what I'm going to do is share my screen somehow. Let's see if I can get this working. By the way, this is an entirely new video setup that I have. So if it's working, appreciate. If not, we'll see. So you should be seeing my laptop at this point. What I have here is my terminal, some keynote behind it, ignore that. Let's make a directory. By the way, I can't see your questions or comments now because I'm here, but if there is anything, I'm sure Ellie will let me know. I'll make a folder, I'll call it my app, my site, something, and I'll just get started really quick. The opinions exist, the decisions are made for me. So I'm just going to install next React DOM. While that's happening, I can still type in my terminal. I'll add TypeScript and types node, types React, dev dependent. Oops, this is why you don't type too fast. And so I install those, and before I even do anything, I can just make a folder, pages. I can touch something in there, and lo and behold, I just const page. I'll export a little heading as my component. Agent, let's type AgentConf here, and I'll export this as my default export page. That's it. I have a page. So if I do npx next dev, look, it detected I used TypeScript and configured TypeScript for me. This is what I mean by ambiguity. It knows what's going on and configures all the shit that I don't want to configure. If I can say shit, I apologize if I can't. So with that, I click this, I open my browser, boom, I have a page. You might think, okay, well, what about routing? I just add a new subroute like hello sup.tsx. Same thing, just sup AgentConf. And just like that, I have nested routing. Look at that. It's handled. It's the problem of deciding what do we use has gone away. I find this extremely powerful. Of course, this is a small contrived example, but can you imagine this at scale? Can you imagine not having a meeting to decide what you use for routing and what you don't, or how you serve a render and so on and so forth? So let's look back at that slide, this one here. Does it reduce ambiguity? Yes. Does it provide performance? I guess we can't see unless we do a stress test. Take my word for it, it does. Does it scale? This produces static HTML, which can be replicated across the content delivery network. I think it's safe to say it scales. And how's the velocity? I mean, I've got live reload, I've got a dev server, I've moved faster than I ever have bootstrapping a React site. So this checks the boxes. If we move on to the edge, let's get this deployed. So if we go to my site here, and let's deploy to the edge. Again, by the way, okay, I'm not trying to sell you anything. These are just my preferences. You don't have to use them. I need to be very clear. Anyway, how do I deploy to the edge? Well, I just, do you want to deploy it? Yes. Where? Here. Yes, just fill out this thing, whatever. And it's deployed to a CDN edge. No decisions. I guess most companies would probably wonder about security. I think if you're at a large, like multi-thousand people organization, you'd think, oh, but we want to deploy it in our cloud, and then it becomes more complex. Although I'm not entirely sure, because even at large companies, I've seen people just use this. Anyway, with that, it's building, it'll deploy to the edge, like that. So again, let's read. There we go. It's done. So if I go to my site, Dusky, it's there. It exists. It's to the edge. If we then look at this list, does this deployment to Vercel's edge give me these things? Yes, including performance. And of course, I've moved faster. Let's go one level deeper. Let's talk about databases. Say I want this to be a blog. How do I do that? Let's get some persistent data going. So I will create let's actually just do an index. I want to show a list of my blog posts. How do I do that? Let's use, so Zeta is not publicly available yet. It will be soon, but I guess I eat my own dog food in this talk. I'm going to create a database. I'll call it blog, and I'll make a table, call it posts. And you can see it's kind of what you'd expect. It gives you like this Excel style UI, but it's actually a relational Postgres database. Pretty nuts. Postgres may be a detail. Anyway, so I have a blog. Let's add some columns. All blog posts have a title, probably. They have
We're getting some reports of people seeing it pixelated. Do you think you could share some like snippets and slides later too in the chat?
Sure. If it's pixelated, I have an idea to deal with it. Hang on. Wow, that's you. Let me also just share my screen. Yeah, let's do that. So I'll share Google Chrome. I'll share my whole desktop. It's fine. All right.
We don't have any secrets. We're all friends here. It's fine.
Totally. Is this better? Good. Awesome. So I have this table. It represents a table in my database. I added a column title. Let's add a longer text column called I don't know, content. And of course, all blogs are posted by people, so I'll add a new authors. And so the goal is to provide a database experience that is trivial. I'll add a title. Thank you, by the way, Ellie, for interrupting me. I would have had no idea seeing that without you, so appreciate.
Gotcha.
There's title, there's name, and let's do pronouns. String pronouns. So these represent authors. And so you have authors and blog posts. Let's just add one for fun. AgentConf 2022, great conference, would recommend, right? Great. What you'll see is there's no real connection between this and the authors, and there's also no authors. So I'll probably add myself. I'll leave that blank, and I'll do he, him, his. I don't like titles. I feel like they are loaded. Anyway, so I wanted to relate this to me. I'll do a link column to authors. I'll call this author as the name of this column. And then I can edit it and add myself as an author. The UI is a bit ugly. It's still in development, whatever. So now I have a table with the blog post and the author right away, but of course I can choose to only see certain columns. So I can maybe just show the author's ID. And this looks like something I'd like to use. So once I filter, sort, whatever, I can get a code snippet. I copy this into my Next.js app. I might even just do it here in the index. Next.js allows fetching data at build time and then rendering a static site based on that data. It's pretty cool. So what I can do is I can export a function called getStaticProps. Its type is getStaticProps. And it's an async function that, let's get rid of that sidebar, that returns props. I need to define some props for my component. So props is, let's just call it blog posts. And it's something that has a title, string content. That's also a string. String, it's an array. Okay, so now I give these props to my React component here. And I also give them to getStaticProps here. And so now getStaticProps is invalid because I'm not actually giving it any props. So I'll just give it blog posts. But of course, we need to fetch them. So I use this get code snippet thingamajigger, paste that. It's still a work in progress, so bear with me. We don't want text, we want JSON. We're working on it. I don't care about, there's also a token here that expires, so don't worry, it's not insecure yet. The real way we do this is we generate a personal access token like in GitHub and use that and fetch only on the backend, which this is doing. So now I'll assign my blog posts. So I'll say blog posts equals, and we'll await this. And after we serialize it to JSON, I want the records property from the response. I think this should be fine. Because of this, now my front end gets a prop called blog posts with blog posts, right? And so we'll add a bit of decoration here just to not be savages. Let's wrap it in a little div. And what we'll do is I'll just post just the blog post itself. So we'll say UL, and when we get blog posts, we'll map over it, post we'll just add a little list item here. The key is the post. They all have IDs as well. I should have added that. Now we also have a TypeScript client that is fully type safe, and you don't need to guess these things. But I'm just, for the sake of this talk, not doing that. So I get this, and I think this is all I need. If I reload, does it fail? I'm in a different route. Does it fail? Please fail. Oh, it doesn't fail. Fantastic. So, I mean, it's again, it's a contrived example. But the point I'm trying to make is I have a database with relations by just clicking around, but more than just having a database by clicking around and then accessing it here. Post.content. What? Save. Okay, yeah. More than having a database and clicking around and having it here, I have guarantees, and that's what I want to highlight. I have guarantees that this database will scale with me indefinitely. So if I post a very controversial hot take and my blog blows up and like the whole world is here to see how much they should hate me, if there's like 1 billion users here, I know that it's not going to keep hitting my database in a way that my database will not be able to handle. That guarantee is awesome because I don't need to think about sharding. I don't need to think about caching. I don't need to think about KV or Redis. Like, it's done, right? And so let's go back to that slide. There's Zoom UI in my computer now. Let's see. So now let's go back to that slide. Does it deliver on removing some ambiguity? Yes, because I have an API, I have tables, I get stuff. Does it deliver on performance? I don't know, you tell me. I reload this 1 million times, I still get fast things. With numbers though, our limits we're seeing so far is really just the row limit of a given Postgres database. Besides that, it's a bit hard to max out Zeta at this point. Does it scale? That's the other thing. Zeta has a ton of intelligent caching mechanisms and so on. There's definite guarantees. I was stress testing it today myself. It does scale quite well. And we intelligently, shard where we need to. We handle all of that stuff so you don't have to. And of course, this has boosted my velocity. Let's wrap up with the last thing in the next stack, Tailwind. I don't know if you all have used it. If you haven't, you'll see this now. If you have, then it won't be long. So Tailwind has a guide with Next.js, so it fits really nicely here. And it's just a matter of bing, bang, boom. You know what I'm saying? So let's install that, run that. This again, it removes the question marks, provides guarantees, therefore facilitates my developer velocity. It added a Tailwind file, just replaced. I'm literally just following the docs here. And it gives me what I want. So I create a new file, globals.css. By the way, if anyone's here who works at Tailwind, I just want to commend you on your docs. It's just fantastic. And the last thing we need to do is include that style sheet somewhere using Next.js's app. I realize I'm using Next a lot. Again, I want to tell you, I don't work at Vercel and I'm not trying to sell you anything. I believe good things need to be recognized. You know what I'm saying? So app.tsx, and we'll just include that globals style sheet here. Again, look at this. It's just an import statement. Good. And now if we go back here, yes, thank you. There. So the styles have been reset, and you might be thinking, wow, that didn't do anything. It doesn't look any prettier. Yes, but let's style, I believe the velocity here. So let's style this really quickly. What we'll do is use the IntelliSense that comes with Tailwind. So we'll give this a little bit of padding using auto-completion that, yeah, so padding 8. Let's make this a card. How long has it taken you to make a card in the past? You tell me. Give it a large shadow. And again, all of this is auto-completable. We'll make it rounded. How does that look? That doesn't look so bad. Let's give it a border and some padding. Look, I have auto-completion on this. It's pretty nuts. Padding, I don't know, 4. My goodness. Let's make the heading actually look like a heading. Font bold. I think it's text 5XL. Yeah. Look at that. That's nuts. So I think I'm demonstrating here how the decisions on what class names to give. Do we use BEM? Do we not use BEM? Nobody cares. You use Tailwind. It handles that for you. So we have a styled thingamajigger. We can lastly probably just restrict the width a little bit. Let's say width is, I don't know, something like that. Oh, that's way too little. Yeah, something like this maybe. Nope. I'm getting hung up on details, aren't I? Okay, good, perfect. So we've built a blog. We built a full stack blog that handles the point I'm trying to make is it handles all of the decisions that would otherwise go into creating something like this without us having to think about it. This blog, I'm guaranteed, will be, let me pull up this slide here, will be obvious, performant, scale well, and allow developers to have just tremendous developer velocity. Let's see if I can get back my blurry thingy here. Yeah, good. Tremendous developer velocity. So with that, let's talk about some takeaways. Really, the goal is to allow people to build their thing that they want to build fast. Someone's asking, what's the price? That's a good question. I'd probably room for discussion after. But the goal is to build fast. Yes, there are trade-offs, but ultimately, if I'm working on a blog, I really would hate to spend 3 weeks hung up on thinking about database scale, especially when there isn't any in the beginning, right? I build once and scale later. That's the goal. And I especially want to shout out the newcomers to the tech industry who have felt stress, like they've started with MERN-stack boot camps or similar. And then it's like analysis paralysis. What do I choose? And so on. Hopefully this stack will help kind of make a lot of the decisions and allow us to move faster. With that, that's all I have for you. Thank you so much for your time today. Thanks for having me.
Yay, thank you. Gonna get some chat claps in for that. Awesome. Let's go to some questions. Let me scroll back. Too much clapping. What's the price? Like,
I mean, if you're talking about Zeta specifically, or you're talking about like the approach to building fast, because one is really philosophical and the other one can be quantified.
I'm gonna assume it refers to the Zeta.
It's free. There's a free tier that's free up to like 1 million rows or something. Like it's good for most things. Also free without a credit card, But I mean, that's a good point. What's the price of like building in such a fast way using these technologies? I see a blog post in that. Max, I'm doing good, buddy. Thanks for checking in.
I have a question. There's been this like big sort of like movement towards like no code tools, which is great. Do you think there's a world where you could like have a Zeta and then also a Webflow and then just never write any code ever?
That's exactly what Zeta is trying to help that specifically. Like if you look at our slide decks for investors and things, it's usually like the database for low code. Because yeah, that's exactly, because right now when you start to go from Webflow or low code into code is usually at that intersection of data, right? So if we can make that really visual and low code as well, we have a winner. In fact, that table UI I showed, all of that is possible also with code and also via CLI, but like our goal is to provide, I don't know if you all are familiar with Airtable, but we really admire their UI and we think that's kind of the future of databases, low code databases.
Cool. I think that'd be great for like getting people who know maybe like a little bit about tech and code, but not
exactly,
full time. I've definitely known a lot of like marketers who are like a lot of the way there, but the tools are hard. That's very cool. Is Zeta also suitable for full-on data heavy apps?
Yeah, that's the whole point. Like we built it to be, so I tweeted some time ago and I said, imagine a world where you never have to worry about your database, right? It's really hard to imagine this at scale. Like when I was working at Spotify, we spent a long time, I don't know if I'm allowed to share this, but I'm not contractually obliged there anymore. But we spent a lot of time working on regional failover on large databases across the world. So like if US East doesn't work, what happens, right? And we spent, I'd say, months trying to figure that out. So Zeta just kind of makes that happen in an instant. I like to say Zeta turns you into Thanos because databases are snap.
And it murders everyone?
No, it just gives you the whatever.
I'm just messing with you. Half the data disappears.
That'd be great. Oh, that's a good one.
like fake disappear the data. Let's see. We have a couple other questions. Is it launched or is it launching?
No, so so at the end of the month, we have a massive wait list, as you can imagine. There's like thousands of people who have signed up. We're rolling out to our first 5-ish customers at the end of this month. So like literally next week. But afterwards, we shall roll out more widely. We will pick from the list. So if you want to get on that, really just DM me is probably the fastest way, but also Zeta.io has sign up.
You heard it here first, folks. Jump the queue. Only at AgentConf.
No, that doesn't.
Link, you'll miss it. Immediate access, I think is what he said, definitely. I'm kidding. Don't listen to me. I don't have slides. Therefore, I am not in charge. Some Mongo hate. Love that. What's your take on something like Firebase? It does even more, right? Auth, etc., removes even more choices potentially.
Yeah. There's a sweet spot, isn't there? Like I feel like this goes back to Thanos. Like yes, genocide is wrong. You're hearing this at AgentConf, believe it or not. But Thanos wanted, like the right balance, right? And I feel like with tech stacks, it's so important to nail the layer of abstraction between helping too much and not helping at all. I think React is as popular as it is because it does exactly that. It doesn't give you way too much, but it also doesn't give you too little. And it allows room for like a community to exist. Personally, I think Firebase does a lot. And it presents, like in software architecture and systems design, a single point of failure is usually something you want to avoid. And so if your single point is Firebase, I don't know if I can be comfortable with that. But if you have a Jamstack or whatever next stack app, and each concern is isolated and outsourced, I think that's a good layer. So if your database is one thing, and if your auth service is another thing, and they can talk between themselves, but everything's separate, I think is much better than having everything as one thing, as Firebase does.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing your stack and also telling us about Zeta. Tejas, another please round of emoji applause. And thanks for popping by. Before we go, we have one very special giveaway, which is a very special one of a kind special merch situation. But you have to be quick on the keyboard. And it's going to be in the chat. I'm going to ask a trivia question, and whoever answers it correctly first wins the prize. So start stretching your fingies. While you do that, I just want to thank you all for coming to the first ever virtual AgentConf. Thank you to our partners, and thank you to our sponsors, and thank you to Ria, who's here helping us with like tech stuff. Hi. And I also want to shout out that we have 2 more sessions. The next one is on the 3rd of Feb with Emil Sawyer, Sarah Vieira, David, who's here. Hi, David, and Attila. That one will be hosted by the wonderful Brent Vatney. I am unable to come to that one because it's my birthday party, so I'll be busy. But I'm sure you will all have a very good time. But I will be at the one after that, which is, I think, the week after or 2 weeks after or something. It's all on the website. There's a blog post with the schedule. So definitely come. Okay, are you ready? The trivia question is, what is the name of the inventor of the World Wide Web? Oh, full name, first and last. Oh, they're coming in. Pew, 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 pew. Who said Mark Zuckerberg? David, get out of here. This is the real world, not the metaverse. Tim Berners. Okay, nobody used the dash in the name, so I guess everyone loses. No, I'm kidding. It looks like Michael is our winner. Congratulations, Michael. In the chat, Tanya, do you want to tell Michael how he can get in touch or they can get in touch? Just for the winner, because then we have to secretly get your address and all that stuff.
We contact him and set everything up.
If not, just hound them on the Twitter account. I'm sure you can find them. And yeah, thanks again to the sponsors and all of you for coming, and Kent and Max and Tejas for sharing all your knowledge. And thank you all in the chat for putting up with my chat posting. Really appreciate it. And yeah, have a wonderful rest of your day, I suppose.
I
We
have
did
a
it.
question before we go. Just is the
Yeah.
comments going to be shared? Because I think there's some questions in there that we might have interest in answering async after.
You can stick around. Do you want to answer them now?
No, but if we have access to the question and the asker,
actually,
then
speakers, where is the best place to find you on the internet? Maybe pop that in the chat. Wouldn't want any of those conversations to go stale just because of the Zoom call. Yeah, share. Wait, oh my God, I'm gonna share mine too, and then you can all send me memes. But don't ask me any technical questions. I'm kidding, you can ask me. I cannot get you verified. Just gonna throw that out there. I already follow all of you because I'm a big fan, so I can't verify you, Max. Be more important. Jesus. Become a local government official. That's like the most obvious way to get it, I think. Opinions are my own. Okay, well, and then I guess Max for mayor. I would, if I could vote in Austria, Max, I would definitely vote for you. Not mayor, but like local councilman or something. Ooh, mayor of Dornbirn, that's good. Because then AgentConf would have to like ask you for funding and like permissions and stuff. And you could be like, only if I get to keynote, am I right? You get a spot forever if you were the mayor. Chief of the fire brigade, perfect. You can be drunk.
You can.
All the funding for AgentConf, none for road repairs. It's gonna be impossible to drive in Dornbirn this time next year. 99% AgentConf, 1%. Your salary? What does a mayor make? Does anyone know? Has anyone been a mayor? Is it a paid position? I assume it is. You have to do it all day. Okay, 90-10. In case Fastly goes down again. Yeah, that's nice. All right. On that note, thank you all for coming. See you at the next one. Well, you'll see each other, but I'll see you at the one after that. Make good choices. Be nice to people on Twitter. Don't fight about CSS frameworks. It's not worth it. You the best. You're wonderful. Say that in the mirror every morning. Lots of goodbyes. Thanks for the talks. You're very welcome. I worked very hard on just turning up here today and not doing any of the work. Bye, Adrian. Bye, Andres. Vote for Max. Bye, Slatko. Bye, Greg. Oh, no, you stop it. Oh, thanks. Well, my last birthday party was me by myself in my apartment in lockdown, so I'm really excited for this one. I have already ordered like 50 mini donuts from the donut shop here in London, and they don't normally make minis unless you special order them. I'm very excited, in like 5 different flavors. Follow me on Twitter, which is also where I work, because I was not content with just being on Twitter all day for pleasure. I am now on Twitter all day for money. So it's really living the dream. But if you're not on Twitter, you should be. It's gotten real good in the past 2 years. Twitter Spaces, fave feature. It's like a podcast, but live. Oh, thank Miro. Hi. Where have you been? Where are you? There's like pages of people I never knew who was in here or who wasn't in here.